Hi, John again. This is my entry into Rockboy 680's 500 subscribers competition. Okay, congratulations. Hope to be up there with you one day. I'm kind of new starting out of this, so I've still got some way to go. Anyway, so the record I would have used to test my current record player, stereo, whatever you want to call it, is this record. And I've just recently shown this in a video to do with singles. I always use this 12-inch by Academy. A track called You Are In My System. Has excellent stereo effects. That's quite nicely produced too, and it's 12-inch, and 12 inches always sound pretty good. But since I've already shown that in a different video, I would like to nominate this one instead. This is an album by a band, 60s band called Spanky and Our Gang. The album is called Without Rhyme or Reason, backed with Anything You Choose. It's actually just a regular album, but it has two names. And on one side it says Anything You Choose, backed with Without Rhyme or Reason. The other side it says something different. So this came out in '69, and kind of a 60s folky kind of a cappella type psychedelic band. Sound a little bit like Mamas and Papas sometimes, but not always. But this particular album I think is really fun because it's got good production. And there's a particular track on here, first track on side one, I don't know if you can see it all the way up there, called Leopard Skin Phones. And the stereo production on the album is very good, but particularly on that track it sort of makes full use of stereo effects, you know. It's kind of a bit like a novelty song, I suppose, in some ways, and it's all about different things coming out of different channels on your stereo, on your headphones and things. It sounds great on speakers too. I recommend that if you haven't heard it before. What's the next one? Favourite soundtrack? My favourite soundtrack that I would use in this instance is a soundtrack for a movie or a film called Picnic at Hanging Rock. Picnic at Hanging Rock is based on a novel, and the novel is really good. Written by, I believe, an Australian author, either Australian or English, but it's the story is set in Australia at the turn of the last century. You can go onto YouTube and see the trailer for the movie. It's about a girls' school, and they have sort of a mysterious occurrence where they go on a picnic together. It's a school-out trip, and something strange and weird happens. Now, the novel was written in such a way that when they published it, they didn't publish the last chapter. So you're left hanging, pardon the pun, you're left hanging, not really knowing what really went wrong, what happened. You can find the information about the last chapter of that novel online if you look hard enough. But the soundtrack was by this guy called George Zamfir, who does this sort of panpipes music, very atmospheric. Goes really well. However, I don't have a copy of that with me right now. I think my copy would either be in the UK or the US somewhere, where I've left records during my travels. So instead I shall use this one, which is the Graduate soundtrack. It says original soundtrack. If you haven't seen this movie, it's a really good one, real classic. Dustin Hoffman plays a young guy, just graduated from college, moved home, and feels very sort of disorientated, and he has an affair with the owner of this leg, the original MILF. Yeah, I recommend that. That's a good soundtrack because it's Simon and Garfunkel, and they're always good. And the songs are slightly different from what you hear on the regular albums as well, you know, without percussion and things like that. What have we got? Live albums. I will nominate this as being my live album. This is Jimi Hendrix. This is my old copy. In the West, it's called. And what's said about Jimi Hendrix is that he did a lot of stuff live. There's lots of live recordings of him before, and some of them are better than others. You know, he had good days and bad days, just like anybody else. And when he was on form, it was cracking, really, really good to listen to. The bad days were perhaps a little bit more mundane, but this captures him on sort of some of his good days. Now, I know that you're Rockboy. You're a big fan of the Beatles. You may not be aware that Jimi Hendrix actually performed Johnny Be Good. What we got? Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band on stage, and I kind of sort of put his own take on it. I recommend listening out for that. Jimi Hendrix playing Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It's live, but this is a really good album. And if you like if you want to learn about Jimi Hendrix, then this would be a good place to start, because he does some really great stuff. And the track Johnny Be Good, I mean, that's stellar, unbeatable. Recommend it. So next up, we've got the picture disc. I'm going to show this one. This is an album by Men Without Hats, and it's a picture disc. Particularly happy about this one. This was perhaps the first record I sought after and collected, and I've collected records since I was 13. But this was one that I kind of identified I wanted to have, and it was deleted when I started looking for it, I guess in the 90s, I guess. And you know, I sort of asked around a lot of sort of record stores, record fairs, dealers and things like that, and everyone said they'll look out for it for me, but they never did. But eventually I stumbled upon it myself, and you know, if you're used to going out digging for records, and you always have a short list of ones in your head that you really want to look out for, it's really cool when you find it. And this, yeah, this is my picture disc of that album. Great album, very electronic, very 80s. It's got the track Safety Dance on it, which is sort of their big hit. So yeah, that's my picture disc. And the last one was the box set thing. It was interesting to hear other people's responses to your competition. A lot of people say, oh, don't really do soundtracks, or oh, don't really do live albums. There's some really good soundtracks out there, and there are some really good live albums. A lot of the modern ones I'd say were a bit dull, because they basically sound just like the recorded music with a bit of reverb on top. I mean, some of the old ones, like the Jimi Hendrix one I showed, the songs are different from what he does in the studio, and he does other stuff with other people's material, which is really good, and that's the point of a live album. But I'm going to be one of those ones that says, oh, I don't really do box sets. A lot of the music I collect is sort of old, from the 60s and 70s, some of the 80s. Box sets weren't really, as far as I know, they weren't really the thing in those days. And I don't buy an awful lot of new stuff. But I'm going to show this. This is something that I picked up while I was in California. I was living in Sacramento for a few months, and in America they have a big chain of what we call charity shops. Well, they call it thrift stores, Goodwill. And Goodwill, pretty good place to go looking for records. And I picked this up. This is a CD box set of Janis Joplin. It's got 3 discs, pretty much, you know, most of what you'd want to hear, I guess, of Janis Joplin. I think I have most of her stuff on vinyl, but this was going for next to nothing, so I picked it up, and that was cool. And yeah, I can listen to it in the car. It has a nice booklet inside with lots of pictures of Janis Joplin, and inserts that fall out, bits and pieces. So that's my box set that I will show.